Feeling overwhelmed by your new leadership role? You're not alone. When I first became a leader, I had almost no guidance. That's why I created this series, The Wisdom of Leadership Experience. It's packed with in-the-trenches advice I wish I'd had back then. While there's no one-size-fits-all approach to leadership, I'll share strategies and tips that have worked for me over the years. My name is Ian Minderman, and I have over 20 years leadership experience. I've been a leader in multiple settings, from the military to startups. Most of my career has been spent leading teams in the corporate world, including a Fortune 50 company. I hold an MBA from the University of Illinois with specializations in leadership and data analytics. This leadership journey is yours, but you don't have to go it alone. Join me for the wisdom of leadership experience. Before assigning new tasks, it's crucial to understand your team's workload. This means accurately gauging both their current commitments and their capacity for additional work. In the first part of assigning work, we'll delve into individual and team capacity. Inevitably, this discussion leads to work-life balance, which we'll also explore. Effective work allocation isn't about treating everyone the same. Team members have varying levels of knowledge, experience, and skill. To illustrate my point, let's look at an example. You have two team members. One is a new hire, straight out of college and working their first professional job. The other is a 10-year veteran of the team that has consistently performed at a high level. The new hire is eager to learn, has a lot of energy, and is excited to start their career. The veteran has years of networking at the company, knows the tricks and shortcuts for getting things done, and is so experienced they can do most tasks in their sleep. Their capacities differ significantly. Remember, assigning work needs to be fair, but not the same. As a leader, it's your responsibility to assess each team member's capacity and assign work accordingly. This ensures fairness while maximizing efficiency. But your role goes beyond mere allocation. You also foster development, helping each member reach their full potential. Witnessing your team members grow and thrive is one of the most rewarding aspects of leadership. Part 2 of assigning work will cover individual task allocation. For now, let's explore capacity tracking. Imagine this scenario. You're in a meeting with your manager and you are informed that a high priority project is about to hit your team. Your manager asks, "How will this impact your team's workload?" Without a clear understanding of your team's capacity, answering that question becomes a guessing game. In the past, some leaders might have taken an approach like, "Let's just keep assigning work until someone complains." But this strategy, I call the cry uncle approach, is a recipe for disaster. Why? First, many employees are hesitant to speak up when they're overloaded. They might not want to be seen as unproductive or a burden on their colleagues. Second, constantly pushing people to their limits can lead to burnout and ultimately employee turnover. This is not only bad for morale, but it's also costly for the company. There's a better way. Proactive capacity tracking allows you to understand your team's workload in real time, enabling you to make informed decisions about work allocation and project impact. While I'm a big believer in minimizing administrative tasks, time tracking is essential. If your company already has time tracking software, the key is to ensure accurate data entry. Encourage your team to log their projects accurately and to consistently estimate the time needed for each task. Most time tracking software also offers reports and dashboards that allow you to monitor your team's capacity and deadlines at a glance. If you don't have access to time tracking software, don't worry. Here's a simple spreadsheet system I used to keep track of my team's capacity. I created a central spreadsheet with a separate tab for each team member. On each tab, I listed their current projects. Next, I added columns for each week of the quarter. I also included a total cell each week, allowing me to see how much time each team member had allocated for that week. Finally, I placed this spreadsheet in a shared location where everyone on the team could access it. I affectionately called this system team plates. because it essentially provided a snapshot of what was on everyone's plate at any given time. Each Friday, I'd ask the team to update their plate by estimating the number of hours they expected to work on each project during the following week or beyond. Once a project is completed, they simply add a 0 for projected hours the rest of the weeks. After setting up the initial spreadsheet, I empowered each team member to take ownership of their individual tab and update it regularly. Honesty and open communication are crucial for this system to work effectively. I encourage my team members to provide realistic time estimates for their task. If there were any discrepancies or concerns about projected workload, we discuss them openly and collaboratively. To avoid overwhelming spreadsheets, we started fresh each quarter. Team members would copy and paste any ongoing projects to the new worksheet and then re-estimate their projected time for those tasks. This kept the individual tabs manageable and easy to navigate. Now let's talk about what actually goes on a team plate. It's important to establish clear guidelines. Here are a few things I keep in mind. I implemented a simple rule. Any project or task that is likely to take 5 or more hours of work in any given week should be listed on the team plate. This helps us prioritize workload and ensures that no one gets bogged down entering a sea of small tasks. It's important for team members to include any planned vacations or sick leave on their plate. This helps explain why some weeks might have lower projected work hours. Let's face it, there are always smaller tasks, emails, team meetings, and administrative duties that take up time throughout the week. Instead of expecting team members to track every single one of these tasks, I established a reasonable buffer, let's say 20% of a typical 40-hour work week. This buffer accounts for those smaller, untracked tasks that inevitably pop up. That means that 80% or 32 hours is the maximum for someone to be at full capacity. Now you might be wondering, should each team member's workload always add to exactly 32 hours per week? The answer is no, not necessarily. The reality is that workloads will naturally fluctuate throughout the year. There will be busy times with deadlines looming and quieter periods where things slow down a bit. This ebb and flow is just part of the natural business cycle. The key here is to be flexible and adaptable. The beauty of the team plate system is that it allows you to see these fluctuations in capacity in real time. By encouraging honest and realistic time projections, we can get a clear picture of what each team member has on their plate at any given time. If someone's projected workload for a particular week falls below 80%, that's perfectly all right. There's no need to panic or force extra work on them just to fill up their schedule. So what happens when someone consistently has a lighter workload than their colleagues? Well, in that case, I might take a look at the plates of the other team members. Perhaps there's an opportunity to rebalance the workload by reassigning a project or task. This helps ensure that everyone is contributing fairly and avoids situations where one person is overloaded while another has extra time on their hands. On the other hand, there might be occasional weeks where someone's projected workload falls below 80% for legitimate reasons. In these situations, I encourage my team members to use that free time productively. This could be a great opportunity for them to focus on their professional development by taking an online course or attending a workshop related to their field. It could also be a chance to catch up on those smaller administrative tasks that often get pushed aside due to deadline pressures. Or perhaps they could even use some of that time for a well-deserved day off to recharge and come back feeling refreshed and ready to tackle the next challenge. Now let's revisit that scenario where you're in a meeting with your manager and a new project lands on your plate. Remember how I mentioned feeling unprepared without a clear understanding of your team's capacity? Well, with a system like team plates in place or using time tracking software, you're no longer flying blind. You can confidently answer your manager's question about how this new project will impact your team's workload. Based on the data you have at your fingertips, there might be several options to consider. Perhaps the team can easily absorb the additional workload without any issues. On the other hand, maybe the new project would push them over capacity. If that's the case, you can have an informed discussion with your manager about potential solutions. Perhaps you might explore the possibility of deprioritizing one of the existing projects to make room for the new one. Another option could be negotiating deadline extensions on some of the current projects, creating some breathing room for the team. No matter what approach you take, having accurate capacity data empowers you to make informed decisions and have a productive conversation with your manager. You can approach the situation with confidence, knowing exactly what your team is working on and how much of their time is already committed. It's important to acknowledge that while capacity tracking can be a valuable tool for preventing work overload, ultimately, work-life balance is a shared responsibility. On the one hand, as a leader, I can use capacity tracking to ensure that workloads are distributed fairly and that team members are consistently pushed beyond their limits. However, it's also up to each individual team member to take ownership of their own work-life balance. Open communication is crucial here. If a team member has a personal commitment that requires them to adjust their schedule, they need to feel comfortable talking to me about it. Together, we can work out a solution that accommodates their needs while ensuring that their workload remains manageable and deadlines are met. The point I want to emphasize here is that while I, as their leader, am committed to creating a work environment that promotes work-life balance, it's not solely my responsibility to ensure each team member achieves perfect balance. Ultimately, each individual needs to be empowered to create their own work-life balance. Effective capacity tracking isn't just about creating a system. It's about fostering a culture of open communication, collaboration, and respect for individual needs. By understanding your team's capacity, you can make informed decisions about workload allocation, project impact, and resource allocation. This not only reduces the risk of burnout and turnover, but also empowers you with data to advocate for your team when additional resources are needed. Remember, a happy, well-balanced team is a productive team. By implementing a capacity tracking system and fostering open communication with your team members, you can create a work environment where everyone feels supported, empowered, and equipped to achieve their full potential. Now, go out there and lead with confidence.